Begin today the Gemara on Daf Kuf Mem Hey Yomid Beis, 6 lines up from the bottom of the Yomid where it says Rab Chanina Omar. Okay, the Gemara here quoted the pasuk where it says in Mishlei Kol Yimei Oni Roim V'Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, which simply means the days of a poor person are bad, and one that has a glad heart he drinks constantly. So what is this pasuk talking about? The simple pshat of the pasuk is speaking about a person that's poor. But the Mashayir says that the Gemara is going to explain that this pasuk is speaking about other situations, and the reason is because the beginning of the pasuk and the end of the pasuk don't really match. It starts off with Yemei Oni, and then it ends off with Toiv Leiv. So it should have ended off with speaking about someone that's rich as opposed to someone that's poor. So therefore, the Gemara adds other pshatim besides the simple pshat of the pasuk. The Gemara before brought a pshat from Rab Zayda and Rava. Now the Gemara says Rab Chanina. Rab Chanina says Kol Yemei Oni Roim. The days of a person that are poor are bad. What does this mean? This refers to someone that has a wife that's not good for him. And v'toiv leiv mishta tamid, one that is good, glad always, and he drinks constantly. One that has a good wife. Rabbi Yanai says, Kol Yemei Oni Roim, the days of a poor person are bad. This is a person that's very finicky, and he's constantly getting disturbed by things that are not clean and not exactly the way he wants it to be, so therefore his life is always difficult. This is a person that he can handle things, he can tolerate, and therefore he doesn't get disgusted by things, and therefore he has his life is better. Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol Yemei Ani Roim Zeh Rachama. This is a person that's overly compassionate. When anything small happens to somebody, he gets all disturbed, then he cries and it bothers him. So therefore his days are difficult. V'toiv leiv mishta tamid zeh achzari. A person that is mishta tamid, he's always glad and he's always drinking, is someone that's an achzar, which is, how do they translate achzar there? Someone that is cruel. Yeah, simple time translation, but it doesn't mean that you have to be cruel, but it means someone that doesn't get so overly sensitive about things that happen. He knows how to handle things. Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, Kol Yemei Ani Roim, all the days of a person that are poor are bad. What does this mean? A person that is very stingy, and therefore he's always worried that people are taking things from him. He's has a difficulty with sharing and giving to others. The Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid Zeh Shadai Toirachava. Person that is always glad and he's drinking is when a person that's broad and he shares and he's generous, and therefore he has it good. Another thing Rabbi Shua ben Levi said about this pasuk, and here Rabbi Shua ben Levi says something according to the simple translation of the pasuk, that it's talking about a person that's actually poor and he doesn't have what to eat. That Kol Yemei Ani Roim, the days of a person that are literally poor are bad because he has nothing to eat. So, and this Rabbi Shua ben Levi asked, why are we saying this? But for ha'ike Shabbosis v'Yomim Tovim, there are Shabbosis and Yomim Tovim that he does have what to eat, because even a person that's poor, food would be distributed for the poor people me'erev Shabbos le'erev Shabbos, so they should have what to eat. So even if all week he's eating just some dry bread or a little bit of food, but on Shabbos he gets a proper meal to eat, and he could eat meat and eat properly on Shabbos. So why we say that all days, including Shabbos and Yom Tov, are bad as well? And says the Gemara the Shmuel. This is based on what Shmuel said. The Omar Shmuel said, Shinui vest tchilas chayli. When a person changes a certain habit that he has, that itself is the beginning of an illness. So the fact that this poor person all week is just eating bread, and then Shabbos, now he comes and eats meat and he has a proper meal, so that itself, the change to his body, can cause illness. So therefore even Shabbos and Yom Tov is also roim, is also not good for him. Now, Ksiv b'Sefer Ben Sira. It says in the Sefer of Ben Sira, which is a Sefer that was written, but it was not included in Nevi'im Ksuvim. It's Sefer Chitzainim. It's a sefer that has in it Divrei Musar, it has in it it's his Tevis, good advice, and it's quoted in the Gemara at different times. So it says there that Kol Yemei Ani Roim, regarding this that it says in Mishlei that all the days of a poor person are bad. Ben Sira said Af Leilos. This means not only daytime but even nights as well. And the reason is B'Shval Gagim Gagoy, because he has the lowest roof of all the roofs in the houses in the town or in the city. His roof is the lowest, and therefore Mimitar Gagim Lagagoy. So all the rain from other houses that are attached to his house, so the rain drips down onto his house, and therefore it causes him damage. Okay, you have leaks and so on. So even at night he suffers from this. And also Berum Harim Karmai, his vineyard, a person that's poor, he has it on the top of the mountain. Now the quality of a vineyard is when you have it lower down a little bit, further down, and not on the top of the mountain, and down the valley, or further down in the mountain. But the poor person, has his vineyard on the top of the mountain, and then what happens? When he's working and fertilizing and doing the work in his vineyard, so from the earth and from the fertilization that he's working in his vineyard, it falls down. It falls down to the vineyards below, and therefore he loses from this. So this is also what he suffers from his work that he does. Okay. Ben Sira. It was.
Why should have been in Islam for the?
No, it shouldn't have. No, you're right. It's not. It wasn't. I think it was written in that time period, but it wasn't included. It's a sefer. It's called a sefer chitzoni. But it has in it, as I mentioned, Eitzes Tevis and Divrei Musar. It's quoted in Gemara sometimes. A person, a chassan that is, he's married, meaning Edison, the first stage of marriage, and he sends gifts for the kala to the house of his in-laws. Shalach sham meya mana. He sent gifts in the value of 100 mana. V'achal sham sudus chassan. Now, by the time of the Edison, by the Kiddushin, so like it was in the times of the Gemara, that the Edison was at one time, and then the actual Nisuim, when they got fully married, was a while later. Could even be a year later. So now at the time at the Edison, so he was by his in-laws' home, and they made a celebration, and he ate the sudas chassan. They made a special suda for the chassan. So then, afila b'dinner, even if that suda that he ate there by his in-laws, by that celebration, it was only a value of one dinner. Eina nigbin. So now the gifts that he gave to the kala, even if now he passed away, or she passed away, or he's divorcing her, and he's not ending up concluding the marriage, he's not getting married to her, he cannot collect back the gifts that he gave for the kala. Once he already was there and he enjoyed and he ate in the house of his in-laws, we understand that his das of giving in return the gifts was in return for the fact that he ate there. So he already enjoyed and ate there, so therefore in return for that, he's giving all these gifts, even if the value of the gifts that he gave is much more, nevertheless it was given to keep. And he can't collect it even if he doesn't end up fully marrying this wife. However, if he did not eat over there by his in-laws, a suda by the time of the Edison, a suda that was made for the chassan, then whatever gifts he gave, so he gave the gifts, not in return to anything, he didn't eat there. Then Harei Nigban, he only gave it with the understanding that he's going to end up marrying this wife. If he doesn't end up marrying her because he died, she died, or whatever it is, then it's collected back. You take back all these gifts. Now the Rashbam points out here, based on what we'll see in the Braisa and the Gemara, that the gifts that we're talking about here is such kind of gifts that are what's the word that Rashbam uses over here, the Gemara, they're bolu, they get used up. They get used up and they spoil, meaning if you gave gifts, what that means is you gave food or clothing that get used up. That's the kind of things that we're talking about, that we say that it goes back to him if if he ate over there, then it will not go back to him. Okay, but if this is kind of gifts that do not get used up, then he will always get this back. If you gave valuables, if you gave, I don't know, gold, silver, or other kinds of valuables that do not get used up, then it doesn't matter. Even if he did enjoy and eat there a suda by his in-laws, because these are valuables that stay, so that he's going to get back if he doesn't end up marrying this wife. Okay, we'll see this distinction in the Gemara. Okay, now the Mishnah continues. Shalach sevloinis merubin, if he sends a large amount of gifts, sheyachseru ima lebeis baila, and he said explicitly that he's sending this with the purpose in order that it should be brought when she gets married to him, when she's going to move into him in his house, she should bring it with her. Then those things, he said this clearly, that he's only giving it to her, that she'll bring it with her when she gets married to him. So if they don't end up getting married, then he's going to collect it back from her. Sivlainis muatin, if he sends a small amount of gifts, and he's making it clear that he's sending it to her to use now, when she's still by her father's house. She's going to use it there. Then ein nigban. So then this is something that will not be collected. In other words, in the Reisha of the Mishnah, the case was that the chassan that gave the gifts didn't say explicitly what the condition of these gifts are. So over there, as I mentioned, it depends if he ate a suda there, if he did not eat a suda there. It depends if it's something which gets used up or it does not get used up. But over here in the Seif of the Mishnah, according to the Rashbam's Pshat, the Mishnah is saying something else. When he says explicitly that this is something that you're going to bring when you marry me, then if they didn't get married, then she has to return it. And if he explicitly said that it's meant for you to use there in your father's house, then she can keep it. Omar Rave, sagt Rave.
If it's a little, can't.
Huh? What?
What's the difference if he explicitly said, what's the difference, a lot or a little?
And a chanami. So it's only the derech. You're right. Lashon merubah muatin, the Mishnah is using just an example. Usually when a person gives a very expensive gift to his wife, it's something that he's expecting that she's going to bring back to his house. And usually he says clearly. When it's a little, then it's usually something that Rashbam says, but orcha de milsa. But it could be, even if it's a small gift, but he makes it clear, I want you to bring this, then he'll get it back if he never marries her. Omar Rava said, dafke dinner. When the Mishnah says that the chassan that already ate a suda by his in-laws, so now the gifts that he gave are considered to be in exchange, in return for that, and therefore he doesn't collect that back, even if they don't end up getting married. So the Mishnah said he ate a suda by his in-laws, the value of a dinner. Aval pachas mid dinner loy. But if he ate a value of a suda that was less than the amount of a dinner, then what the gifts he gave are not in exchange for that, and therefore he could take back those gifts if he doesn't end up marrying her. Says the Gemara Pshita, isn't what Rava said obvious? It said in the Mishnah, if he ate a suda, that's even a dinner. So it said dinner. Dinner tanan. Answers the Gemara, Mao the Taim, I would think to say, Hu adin da pachas medinner. That really, even if he had a suda there that's less of a dinner, we also say that whatever gifts he gave were in exchange for that, and he doesn't get back those gifts. Tani dinner, the fact the Mishnah says dinner, orcha de milsikatani. The Mishnah is saying what's common, what's usual. Usually, a basic meal is the amount of a dinner. Gemara also brought this before when it spoke about the din of sheshvinin, a zuz, a dinner. It's the same thing, that the basic amount for a suda is a dinner. Therefore, the Mishnah said dinner, but it's lav dafka, it could be even less. Therefore, Kamash Molan, Rav is saying no, that it's dafka, the amount of a dinner that we say, that the gift that he gives in exchange for that, he doesn't get back. Okay, now the Gemara says, Ochal Tanan. In the Mishnah it said that he ate. He ate by his in-laws. And then we say what the gifts he gave are in exchange for that, and he doesn't get it back. So now the shaila is, Shasa Mai. What's if he didn't eat there, but he just drank? So, Hutnan, another shaila. The Mishnah says that the chassan himself, was there in his in-laws' home, and he ate there, that then he doesn't get back his gifts. Shluchai Mai. What's if he himself was not there? What's if he sent a shliach to deliver gifts, and he went and the shliach ate there? Shamtnan. It said in the Mishnah that he ate where? In his in-laws' house. How about if he did not eat in their house, but shagarloi? If his in-laws sent him a meal that he ate by his house, by the chassan's own house, but he didn't eat it in his in-laws' house. So what's in all these cases? Would I also say that the gifts that he gave are in exchange for this, and therefore he would not get it back? Tashema, so the Gemara brings that ayah from a brayse. The Omer of Yudah Mashmul, Rav Yudah said in the name of Shmuel that we learned in the brayse the following story that happened. There was a story with an individual. He sent to his in-laws 100 wagons of jugs of wine and oil, and that is silverware and gold things, milas and fine woolen garments. And he was riding on a horse with joy. And he came and he was standing at the door of his in-laws and to deliver all these gifts. They brought him out a cup of tea or something hot to drink. And he drank over there outside of his in-laws' house. And now this chassan passed away, and he never ended up marrying this wife. So now what happens over here with all these gifts that he gave? Does he get it back or not? Now, as we said in the Mishnah, once you enjoyed a suda by your in-law's house for the celebration of the Edison, you don't get it back. But over here, he was outside and he only drank something. So the Sara Bira brought this question in front of the Chachamim when they were on Usha. And they said that in this case, he will have to give back the gifts. But over here's the Braise where it makes a distinction. It depends what kind of gifts. And this distinction applies to the Mishnah as well. So those sivloines that get used up, he cannot take them back. Why? Because once he drank something, so the gifts that he gave are in exchange for that, And what gifts do we say are in exchange for this that he drank? Those sivloinus that get spoiled, they get used up. So therefore they will stay. But however, the other gifts that he gave that don't get used up, as you see over here, besides the wine and oil, he also gave silverware and golden kalim. Those things, nigman, that he could always take back. Now, over here, it's not an exchange for what he ate or drank. That you could always take back. So now what do we see from here? That we're applying what it said in the Mishnah regarding this kind of case. Over here that we're saying that what he gave is in exchange for what he ate. Over here we're applying it even in this case where he only drank something. So Shmami, no, from here we could learn that even if he only drank something, we say that whatever he gave as a gift, what gets used up, stays by the kala, and they don't have to give this back. Shamet mina, and you could also understand from here, afilu pachas midinner, that even if what he got was less than the value of a dinner, because our assumption is that if they gave him a hot tea or something to drink, that it doesn't have the value of a dinner. And still it says that those gifts that he gave that get used up stayed with the kala. But Ravashi on this detail says there's no raya. Omer Ravashi said, Man lemelon de l'shachal kala, maginte de shavya alfa zuze vashke. How do we know that they didn't take a precious gem that's worth 1,000 zuz and ground it and put it into this drink? The Rashbamir says that this was done for refuah. It would be some kind of healing that was with this that they crushed into this water. So maybe what they gave him to drink was something extremely valuable. Okay, so that's not a raya. That less than a dinner would be enough that he would not get back his gifts. Now, shamit mina, but another thing we could learn from here, that afilu shagruloi, that he didn't even enter into this in-laws house. They didn't invite him inside. He's standing outside and he drank something and he passed away. So even then I say that he doesn't get back the gifts. But the Gemara says on this also, it's not a raya because Dilma called Pesach Beis Chomov ke Beis Chomov Dami. Our shaila was when the in-laws sent it to his house. But over here, though, he was standing by the doorway, by the entrance of his in-laws' house. Maybe here, that's like he was already inside, and therefore here, he doesn't get back his gifts. But we can't resolve the Iboya before when they sent it to his house. Okay, now another Iboya the Gemara has regarding this halacha, Iboya lahu. So we concluded that it's only if he ate in his in-laws' house something of the value of a dinner. So now, Mao sheyishalish, what's the halacha if he, let's say, only ate something which is a third of a dinner? So we said that then he doesn't get back the gifts, but would he get back maybe, would we say that he gets, again, in such a case, when he ate, he doesn't get back the gifts, but he ate very little, he only ate a third. So do I say that in such a case, a third of the gifts he doesn't get back? Even if 2/3 he would get back, but maybe because he ate a third of a dinner, so a certain percent of the gifts that he gave, he will not get back, according to the amount that he ate. It's one shaila. Another shaila, Shvach Savloinis Mahu. What's if he gave gifts, and now these gifts that he gave improved in value? The Rashbam says, let's say he gave animals as gifts for the kala, and now the animal gave birth. So now in such a case, if you have to return the gifts because they didn't end up getting married and he didn't need a suda there, so you have to give it back. What exactly do you have to give back? Do you have to also give back the shvach, the babies that were born as well? So the Gemara explains the Iboya. Do I say kivin the isnu lididei hadri berishusei? So hadri, they go back if these animals are still here. So what's the halacha? In the case where the marriage wasn't finished off, they go back to the chassan. In a case where he didn't eat there, so berishusei shavuach. So therefore, in such a case, it's his. It's you see that it's still considered to be his. It's always his. It's just it was temporarily there. Now that they didn't end up getting married, so l'mafreya, it shows that it really was always his. So therefore, whatever comes out of it, whatever it gave birth, so it's his shvach. They have to give it all back. Or maybe I understand this differently. Since I see that the halacha is that even if it got lost, that there was a gneva, and this is a oinus. So what's the halacha? That they're going to have to pay and give back to the chassan. If he didn't end up getting married to her, you still have to give that back. So what that really means is that it's not something that was always his that's being kept over there. Over here you see that there's a responsibility for an oinus to give back. So the fact that there's a responsibility of oinus shows that there's a certain kinyan that the kala, that she gets over this, she takes a certain responsibility over this, meaning that really what happens over here is it becomes hers. When he gave it to her, it is hers. Elamai, there's a condition that if he doesn't end up getting married, so then she'll have to give it back. And then, even if there's an oines, she'll also have to give it back. That's the way we understand this. And therefore, so therefore she only has to give back what he gave. But really, while it was in her possession, it was hers, and whatever shvach, whatever baby is born, whatever comes out, she keeps. She just has to give back what the animals itself that he gave, the principle that he gave. Teiku, so these ibayis here remain unresolved. Bayi Rava, another Shaila Rava asks, these gifts that do get used up, so as we mentioned before, those gifts that get used up, so it will depend if he ate there or he did not eat there. So v'loy bolu, what's if it didn't end up getting used up? So in the case where it didn't end up getting used up, so do I now say that because it didn't end up getting used up, so then it's considered to be like gifts that do not get used up, and then I say that it always goes back to the chassan, no matter what. So should I say over here also, regarding these gifts, it was food or whatever it is, it could get spoiled, it could get used up, but it didn't. So do I say now that it's considered to be like gold, silver that does not get used up? So what's the halacha with this? So Tashema, so the Gemara again brings back the brayse that we brought before, that it said there, Vezu halacha hel rabacha sara bir lefnecha chama b'usha, regarding that case of the person that brought a bunch of gifts. And what was the lashon that was used there? They said, the chachamim there said, va'amru sevlainais ha'asuyin livalois, those gifts that you give that get used up, ein nigbin. The chassan cannot collect them again because he ate there already something. V'she'ein ha'asuyin livalois, if it does not get used up, nigbin, then it could be collected. So now you see, it sounds like over here in this lashon that my love, don't you think what they're saying is afagav duloy balu? That this distinction here between those kinds of gifts that their nature is that they get used up, and the others that their nature is that it does get used up. So it's afagav duloy balu. If the nature is that it gets used up, even if it didn't actually get worn out or used up, still because it usually gets used up, that's something that will not have to be returned. That's why they're spelling out over here clearly. Asuyin livalis and ein asuyin livalis. That's what it depends on. You don't look at whether it actually got worn out or used up. So the Gemara says, not necessarily. We can say, loy, no, the balu. It's taka saying this lashon, whether it usually naturally gets used up or not, but it could also mean that it's only if it actually got worn out and used up. That's where it's making this distinction regarding giving back the gifts. Toshama, the Gemara brings a raya enough from what it said in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Sivloinois muatin. In a case where the husband, or the chassan that is, he gave a little gift. And he spelled out clearly, this is the Rashbam's pshat in the Mishnah, that he said clearly that he's only giving these gifts for her to use when she's in her father's house. So meaning he's not giving it to her in order to bring to his house when they get fully married. He's giving it to her to use there. So, ein nigbin, he cannot collect them. So now, what is it mashma in the Mishnah? In the Mishnah, it's mashma that whether she actually ended up using it in her father's house, whether she did not use it in her father's house, it doesn't make a difference. Once he clearly says that he's giving it to her to use in her father's house, whether she used it or not, she can keep. So the Gemara is comparing and saying that the same should be over here regarding this that it says before in the Brayse, that when you have these gifts that usually get used up, so that once the chassan ate over there a suda, that she can keep that. So it doesn't make a difference if she actually used it or she did not use it. The same halacha applies. We don't make a distinction. It remains with the kala. But the Gemara says, no, we're not going to compare it to the case of the Mishnah, because Tirgum Rava explained that what's the case of the Mishnah speaking about? We're speaking about very cheap gifts that he gave her. When it says in the Mishnah of Lenis Muatin, he gave her kerchiefs or bands or things that are very cheap and get worn out right away. Over there we say that he gave it to her to use there, and regardless, she keeps them. Mashenkin over here, when we're talking about such kind of gifts that could get worn out, but could also not get worn, it's possible that it won't get worn out, so therefore that still remains an iboye, whether this is something, if it bepoil did not get worn out, will the chassan get it back or not? Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, there was a story with an individual, he sent his in-laws the gifts for the kala. What did he send? Yayin chodosh, new fresh wine, shemen chodosh, a new oil, and klipishtan chodosh, and linen clothing, new linen clothing. When was this? Bat Seres, in Shavuos time. That was the statement that Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav. So the Gemara says, "My kamash malon." What's the halacha that he was saying in the name of Rav by saying the story? So the Gemara says, either the Chiddush here was trying to say is not a halacha, but he was trying to say Chashivusa de Eretz Yisrael kamashmalan. He's saying how great Eretz Yisrael is, that even Shavuos time, the beginning of the summer, you already have these things available because things ripen so quickly, and therefore you can have already available good wine and good oil, and from the flax that you can make beautiful, nice new clothing. That's the Chiddush. He's just talking about the greatness of Eretz Yisrael. Or another pshat here is that the iton tanosetaina. If a chassan comes and says that Shavuos time, I gave my kala these kinds of things, so we can accept that this taina is true. We're not going to say Shavuos time, you had available oil, wine. It's too early in the season that you should have these things. No, if it's in Eretz Yisrael, where things ripen very quickly and therefore you can have it available, we accept this taina. And then the halacha will be, if the kala denies it, the halacha will be accordingly. Well, the different halachas. But his taina is going to be a good taina in such a case. Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, another statement that Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, Ma'aseh b'adam echad, there was a story with an individual, Sha'amrulai, that it was said to him that Ishtay tutronesi, that his wife is a tutronis, meaning that she's hard of hearing. And she has a mum, so she can't hear. So he wanted to test this to see if this is the case or not. Oh, sorry. Let me say that again. What did I say? Hard of hearing? No. Tutronis means that she doesn't have the sense of smell, right? Doesn't have the sense of smell. No, so she won't be able to cook properly for him. So he wanted to know what's the story here. So what did he do? V'nichnas acharel l'churba. So he went together with his wife into this broken down house. Labaitka, and he wanted to check her out to see what's the story. So he comments to his wife, I smell, and this was in the Golol, in the north of Eretz Yisrael, and he brought with him in his pocket, he had a tznoin, a radish, and he says to his wife, I smell a smell of radish here in the Golol. Wanted to know if his wife, what is she going to react, what is she going to say about this? So Amr Alei, so she answers him also sort of in a joking manner, that man yavlan mikaisves the Yerichai, who's going to give us from the good dates from the city Yerichai of Achalnabe, and I'll be able to eat this sharp radish together with the sweet dates. That's how they would eat it together. The sharpness together with the sweetness, they were able to eat the. So he understood that she has the sense of smell. Now what happened? Nofal Allah churba meisa. This broken down house fell on this woman, and she died. So what happens in such a case? Okay, so now there's two pshatim here in the Rashbam, what we're talking about. The first pshat in the Rashbam is, what we're talking about over here is, that this was a husband and wife only after the first stage of marriage, after Edison. Right? And now he wasn't sure if he wants to finish the marriage or fully marry her. So he brought her into this churba only with the intention to check her out. But now this churba, whose churba was this? This was a churba that, this the Rashbam doesn't say, but the Mefarshim that learned the pshat like this pshat and the Rashbam say that this churba belonged to this chassan. So when you bring your kala after Edison into your house, that's basically nisuin. Now basically, what's the difference between Edison and nisuin? Edison is where the kala lives by her father's house and the chassan lives in his house. Nisuin is when you bring your kala after the Edison into your house to live with her. That's what's called nisuin. So over here, he brought her into his house. But he only brought her into his house to check out if she has a sense of smell or not. Okay, so now, and she died. So regarding this, the Chachamim said, even though he already brought his kala into his house, and usually that's what concludes the marriage, and now it's nisuin, but here, since he only brought her into his house, just to check her out if she has a sense of smell or not, but not because he wants to live with her, so Mesa, if she dies, Eina Yarsha, he will not inherit her. The halacha of a Eishes Ish is that after Edison, you still do not inherit a wife. Only after Nisuin, after the full marriage, then he inherits her. So therefore, in this case, he will not inherit her. That's the first pshat that Rashbam brings. But the Rashbam himself doesn't hold to this pshat. The second pshat that Rashbam brings is that this was actually a husband and wife. They were fully married already. But then after he's married to her, he hears that his wife can't smell. So now he thinks to himself, wait a minute, my wife has a mum. If he has a mum, I want to divorce her. That's what he's thinking to himself. Should I divorce her? And now he's bringing her into this chorba. It wasn't his chorba. He brought her into chorba. He was trying to see if she'll be able to smell or not. And then he realized that she is able to smell. But because in this case, he was still thinking of divorcing her, once a husband thinks of divorcing his wife, he does not yarshin. He does not inherit her. That's the chiddush of the Rashbam here in the pshat of the Gemara. And the Rashbam says, just like the Gemara says in Gittin, when a person decides to divorce his wife, so the halachas of peiris, meaning that her husband takes the fruits of the property of his wife, he does not get that anymore once he decides to divorce her. In this case, when he already had that decision to divorce her because he thought that she can't smell, so therefore over here he will not be yashin her either anymore. Okay, going back to what it said in the Mishnah, Sevloinis Muatin, he gave her a few gifts, and he clearly said that it's in order for her to use in her father's house, so in such a case, she can keep it, because he made it clear that it's for her to use in her father's house. Okay, so the Gemara here brings the halacha lamaisa regarding the halacha of the Sevloinis. Yosef Ravin Sove, Kamei de Rav Papa, Yosef V'Kama, and he sat and said as follows. Bein Shemesa he, whether what happened there is that she died, that's why the marriage wasn't concluded, or Bein Shemesu, he died, or Hadarhu, or the husband backed out from the marriage and he's divorcing her. Sevloinis Hadri, the gifts, and these are valuable gifts that do not get worn out, do not get used up. Those kinds of valuables that the husband gave as gifts, they will always go back to the chassan. This is like we said before in the Braisa. If it's loy balu, if it's not asuyun levalis, that is, if something that stays as is, like a silver, whatever it is, that goes back. Ma'achol mishnah. But if the gifts that the husband gave is the chassan, the husband gave is food that usually gets spoiled, that loy hadar. That if once he ate the suda there, that does not go back. Like basically like what the Braisa said before. Now, Hadraba Ihi, if she's the one that backed out from this marriage, that now she doesn't want to conclude the marriage, so then the halacha is different. Then Hadra Afila Kisha de Yarke. So then even a bundle of vegetables that he gave her, that is definitely going to go bad. It's definitely something that should be getting used up in her house. But if she backed out of the marriage, she's going to have to pay back the value of that to her chassan, the gift that she got. The vegetable's not here anymore, but she's going to have to give him back the value of this. Ravuna Yeshua said about this last halacha here, but v'shamalem d'mei basa b'zayil. When you evaluate this, over here, before we were talking about a bundle of vegetables, but the same would be if you gave her meat, a behema, or meat to eat. So now the fact that she has to pay this back now, how do we value this that she has to pay back? Does she have to pay back the full value of this? So Ravuna Yeshua says, no, she actually gives back a cheap price. Now what means a cheap price? At kama b'zayil. What's a cheap price? At tilsa. You take off a third of this. She only has to pay 2/3 of what she ate. What's the reason for this? So the Rashbam and all the Rishayim explain, the point there is that if you're a mazik, so you have to pay full value when you damage someone's property. If you're a gazlin, you also have to pay full price. But over here, she's not a mazik or a gazlin. She got this as a gift. Elamai was understood that this gift is on the condition that she's going to end up marrying him, and now she backs out. So the fact that she backed out, what does she pay for? What's the definition of why she has to pay? Nene. This is Allah in the Gemara Bava Basra. When you have hana from someone, so even if you can't be you can't be called a mazik and you can't be called a gazlan, but for having hana, you also have to pay. And therefore, but by hana though, you don't pay the full value. You pay for the actual hana, and therefore we go by a cheaper price, which is only 2/3 of what its value is. So, going back now to the halachas of a shchiv mira, which began before in the previous perek, it spoke about a person that's on his deathbed, and there he can say that he wants to give a gift. And usually the halacha regarding a shchiv mira is that even without any kinyan, just by saying who he wants to give to, Chachamim instituted that what he says should take effect in order for him not to get disappointed that they're not listening to him, and he shouldn't die a moment earlier than he has to, and therefore it takes effect. That's usually the halacha of a shchiv mira. But this Mishnah actually, that Rashbam says, speaks about a shchiv mira. There's different details about shchiv mira that we'll see later in this perek. This Mishnah is speaking about a shchiv mira that's saying that he wants to give a gift, and he's actually making a kinyan. There's a kinyan that's being made for the gift that he wants to give. So over here, the Mishnah will discuss what happens if the shchiv mira recovers from his illness, and now he's alive. What happens to that gift that he gave with a kinyan? So now shchiv mira shekos kol mechasav lacherim. If shchiv mira on his deathbed, then he writes and he makes a kinyan that he's giving all his properties to others. But v'shir karka kolshu, he leaves over something for himself. Matnasai kayemes, the gift that he gave is going to remain like a regular gift that a healthy person gives, because the fact that he left something for himself. Why did he leave that little for himself? In case he recovers. So that means that the rest that he gave is given away. However, loishir kolshu karka kolshu, if he did not leave anything over for himself, then whatever he gave, even with a kinyan, eimat nasa kayemes, the matana that he gave will not take effect, because here it's understood that if he left nothing for himself, he's only giving everything away because he was expecting not to recover. But if he did, so then he doesn't want to give this gift, even if a kinyan was made. So this is an assumption. This is what's called an umdene. We assume, even though he clearly made a kinyan here, but nevertheless we assume that he did not want to give it all away if he's going to recover. Who is the Tana that says that we follow a certain assumption that we have, even though he didn't say anything explicitly, and he made a clear kinyan, but nevertheless we follow an assumption. Rav Nachman said, Rav Shimon ben Menasye. This is what Rav Shimon ben Menasye says. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, also brought earlier in the Masechta here. What happens if a person's son was going overseas, or he went overseas, and Vishama Shemei's Benoy? Now the father hears that his son passed away. So so now he has nobody that will inherit him. So he goes and he writes and gives away all of his properties as a gift to someone else. But now his son shows up, he's alive. So Tanakama says matnase matana. Is matana still a matana? Why? Because he never spelled out clearly that he's only giving the gift because his son passed away. So we just go by what he wrote and by the kinyan that he made, and it's an effect. No, the matane will not be in effect. Why? Had he known that his son is still alive, he would never give it all away to someone else. So here we see that Shimon ben Menasye follows a certain umdene that we understand from why he was doing this, even though he didn't say it clearly. Rav Sheshes brings another source of another Tana, Rav Shimon Shazuri. It's Rav Shimon Shazuri. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, or in the Mishnah, the Tnan, it says, in the beginning it was said that a person that's being taken out for execution, they're going to take away his life. Now, so he says he has a wife, and it's in a case where he didn't have any children, and he doesn't want his wife to have to go through Yibum, so therefore he wants her to be divorced. And for Amar he says, Kisvu get leishti, write a get for my wife. Now, he didn't then add tnu. Usually a person has to say, give it to her. But he didn't say that. But hare'elu yichtuvu v'yitnu. You write and you give the get to her. Because it's understood that he wants the get to be given to her, even though he didn't say it clearly. Then later they continued and they said even more. A person that is leaving town and he's going with a caravan of people that are going in deserts and in dangerous places. And he also says before he leaves, Kisvu get leishti, write a get for my wife in case he doesn't return home alive. Even without saying to give it, it's understood that that's what he wants. And Rav Shimon Shazuri says that this umdana, this assumption goes even a step further. Afam asukin. Even a person that is very ill and he's about to pass away, and he says, write a get for my wife, even though he didn't say give it, we will follow the umdana that he meant to give. That's the opinion that we see. Rav Sheshes says, we see Rav Shimon Shazuri is similar to what it says in our Mishnah, that we follow the assumption, the umdana. Now the Gemara explains, we had here two different Tanaim, speaking about two different cases. But Rav Nachman, my time will Moikim law Rav Shimon Shazuri. Why did Rav Nachman, that brought the source from Rav Shimon ben Menasye, why did he not bring Rav Shimon Shazuri as the source for this concept of a umdana to compare to our Mishnah? The answer is because he held that you can't compare. Shani Hassam, that case is different because the Amma Kisfu. Yeah, we are relying on an assumption, but the husband did say something. He said, write a get. What are you writing a get for if not to give it? What's the purpose? Obviously, he already began saying something. It's understood that it means to give. Mashenkin here in our Mishnah, when a person is passing away and he says, give all my properties away to someone else, he said nothing about what would happen if he recovers. He said zero about that. It's just purely our assumption. So you can't compare it to Rav Shimon Shazuri's opinion or Shimon Shazuri's opinion. But Rav Sheshes, my time Rav Shimon ben Menasye. On the other hand, why did Rav Sheshes not want to say that what our Mishnah says is compared to the case of Rav Shimon ben Menasye, when the person is giving his things away because he thought his son died? Because he says that's different. Over there, umdana de muchach shani. Over there, when it's mamish, an assumption which is mamish clear, it's 100% clear that as long as his son was alive, he wasn't giving it away to anybody else. Now he thought that his son died, so he gave it away to someone else. But over here, when this person is not, this person is on a sick bed and he's about to die, so over here in such a case, it's not as clear. The Rashbam here says, "Roiv chaylun l'chaim." Most people that are sick recover. So in this case, this umdana that we have, that when this person gave it away, it's because he thought he was dying, is not as clear as in that case when he heard that his son died. So therefore, Rav Sheshes did not want to compare to that case of Rav Shimon ben Menasye.